fashion where your chin is jutted forward and it's up in the air, away from your chest. That's an arrogant statement, body statement. This guy does it all. If he's just walking, for crying out loud, that's what he does. So this guy thinks he's arrogant enough to do any damn thing he wants. And, you know, he's got congressional leaders who let him get away with all this stuff, emboldening him. But there is some good news, folks. U.S. Supreme Court smacks Florida yet again. U.S. Supreme Court sinks Florida city over floating home. Yes, this is a story from Reuters. When is a floating home not a vessel? The U.S. Supreme Court on Tuesday, earlier today, told a Florida city its argument did not hold water and that an abode on water was nothing but a home. In a 7-2 decision, the court ruled that a gray two-story home that its owner said was permanently moored, that's docked, if you will, to a Riviera Beach, Florida marina was not a vessel, depriving the city of power under U.S. maritime law to seize and destroy it. They did just that. Justice Stephen Breyer said nothing about former Chicago trader Marine pilot Fane Losman's home that would have led a reasonable observer. Nothing about it. That would have said a reasonable observer to conclude it could be used to transport people or things over water, but for the fact that it floated, had no engine, no sail, no mast. There was no way it could have gotten anywhere under its own power. And it was a brick. It was a floating brick. It's a house. It's not even a houseboat. It's just a house that floats. Not, according to Breyer, not every floating structure is a vessel. To state the obvious, a wooden washtub, a plastic dishpan, a swimming platform on pontoons, a large fishing net, a door taken off its hinges, or Pinocchio are not vessels. Now, Riviera Beach near Palm Beach had seized Losman's home after he resisted a court order that he pay $3,040 in dockage fees, and they destroyed it after being unable to sell it. Well, who the hell is going to buy it if they know they got to keep paying for it? Kind of like taxes, right? Today's decision reversed a lower court ruling upholding the fees and clears the way for Losman to seek compensation from the city. Now, Pamela Ryan, the city attorney for Riviera Beach, said in a statement she was disappointed with the ruling, but accepts it. Well, there's nothing else she can do. The Supreme Court handed down the final decision on this one. And she said that the city will revise its marina policies. Again, they don't have a choice. Well, I suppose they could cause trouble and force people to, go through the whole process like Losman had to all over again. But now Losman's going to get some money back from the city that illegally confiscated his home. He says, I feel like I'm floating on a cloud. I've been fighting this city for 6.5 years, and it's humbling to get a reversal. But it happens in Florida. Happened in Florida. Remember, Florida was, if you don't remember Florida, what happened back in the year 2000, then either you weren't born or you just weren't paying attention. Speaking of, that's a win for property rights, actually. If you can believe that, yeah. Property rights victory. But here's another one from WND.com. And the headline is, pay $150,000 to exercise property rights? Well, yes, the Supreme Court today was asked to rein in the shakedown of a property owner by a government body in, where else? Florida, where a water district demanded he pay up to $150,000 to be allowed to develop several acres of a parcel his father bought decades ago. The case was argued by the Pacific Legal Foundation on behalf of the Kuntz family of Florida. The nonprofit group is asking the Supreme Court to make it clear that the Constitution forbids any kind of shakedown in the permitting process. Money grabs, such as the Kuntz family was hit with, are just unconstitutional as land grabs. Now, Paul J. Beard, B-E-A-R-D, II, the principal attorney with the foundation, said the case is historic because of the impact it could have on local government agencies that make demands of citizens and property owners in order for them to exercise their rights. So here's another case that could, once again, well, it could either destroy, further erode property rights, or it could affirm them. That if you own land, you have the right to develop it within certain realms without being asked to pay too much in the form of really a governmental shakedown. Now, if the Supreme Court, because you got to, now the first case that I mentioned, you got to understand it was 7-2, which means a couple of the liberal justices obviously had to vote for this thing. So if liberal justices are starting to say, well, I wonder if they would revisit the eminent domain thing, if it would be different in this time around. But there you go. So we got more. Speaking of justices, I guess Justice Clarence Thomas broke a 7-year silence in court. Justice Thomas, now he only said 4 words in an oral arguments yesterday, breaking his silence on the bench for the first time in nearly 7 years. Now, the justice's remark came during a jocular exchange over whether a defense attorney in a death penalty case was qualified for the job because of her Ivy League degree. Based on the transcript, it appears that Thomas's 4 words, a 4-word retort, made his colleagues laugh, but no one really was sure what he said. Here, Justice Scalia was actually talking, and he said she was a graduate of Yale Law School, wasn't she? Louisiana lawyer Carla Siegler responded, she's a very impressive attorney. Justice Scalia says, and another of his counsel, Mr. Singer, of the 3 that he had, he was a graduate of Harvard Law School, wasn't he? Miss Siegler, yes, Your Honor. Justice Scalia, son of a gun. Justice Thomas, well, he did not. Laughter. Miss Siegler, I would refute that, Justice Thomas. Now, what people are speculating is that some who were in the courtroom said Thomas made fun of his alma mater, which is Yale, in his comment, which wasn't fully recorded in the transcript by the court paper. Now, it appears that Justice Thomas has had an ongoing dispute and feud with his old alma mater of Yale, to the point where his Yale law degree is not in his office, but in a basement somewhere, in his home basement. He doesn't display it. He doesn't. Now, why doesn't he talk? Some people speculate that he's ashamed of his Georgia accent. Some people say that he's too soft-spoken, and the other justices are just, too rambunctious with their questions and arguments. So he just prefers to listen, which is kind of different for a Supreme Court justice. And speaking of, but that's Justice Thomas. And here's another land use case. Glenn Beck, after being refuted by Al Gore to buy Al Gore's failing cable network, has decided that, this rabble-rouser, he's decided to be a rabble-rouser and announced that he wanted to go Galt. In other words, who's John Galt from in reference to the character John Galt from Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. The community that he is planning to start and develop, a self-sustaining community, he said will be known as Independence USA. Now, if and when it is completed, Independence will produce its own food and TV and film content. There will be homes, baseball fields, and a theme park. Think small town USA, but with a Beckish vibe. Beck announces plans on the Glenn Beck program. The main entrance to the proposed community will be based on Ellis Island, because in Beck's words, that's how most Americans came to the country. There will also be a marketplace, but don't confuse it with your local mall. There's not going to be a Gap here, said Beck. There's not going to be an Ann Taylor. You want Ann Taylor, go someplace else. But this whole venture could cost upwards of $2 billion. Now, obviously, Glenn Beck is not a billionaire and such a multi-billionaire such as he is. I think he's worth like $300 million. But in such event, he is going to need backers and other people to invest, and he thinks he can do it. Good for him. Why not? Because, you got what's the place down in Florida that Disney put up, the community? There's something to be said about planned communities when you have the chance and the ability to plan them out. Sometimes they're not all, as long as you don't get overly, like condo associations, you get all these kind of rules. But I'm guessing since Beck is a libertarian, there would be fewer rules and regulations within the community. So you better, understand if you're going to invest down there and move there, that it's going to be, I would assume that it's going to be, hey, whatever you can do, as long as it doesn't affect or harm your neighbor, go ahead and do it. Missing Pennsylvania girl, and we're worried about guns coming onto school property. A missing Pennsylvania girl, 5 years old, was abducted from school. Fear not, she was found. A 5-year-old girl has been found after allegedly being abducted by a stranger from her classroom at a Philadelphia elementary school, where officials didn't learn of her disappearance until 6 hours later. Naila Robinson, 5, Nailla, Robinson, who's 5, was found early this morning by a man in a nearby park in Upper Darby under bleachers and transported to the Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania to be checked for hypothermia. Now, police say the little girl told them that a stranger took her directly from the school on Monday. She said she was blindfolded and walked a couple of blocks to a house. Naily said a teenage girl later took her from that house to the playground, according to police. Now, Naily was taken from Bryan Elementary School on Monday at about 8:50 a.m. by a woman covered with an all-black niqab hairpiece, a piece of cloth that covers the face, according to surveillance video. The school did not know. They didn't know Naila was missing until 6 hours later, when the girl's daycare arrived to pick her up. Now, how does that happen? And we're more worried about keeping people from having their guns instead of keeping our kids really safe. Can you believe this nonsense? Well, of course, a bunch of liberals. Well, folks, we're out of fastest 1 hour that there ever has been on talk radio. We are out of time for the day. We'll be back here tomorrow. We're trying to hit for 7 p.m. again. I got a lot going on. I'll probably explain more if I have time tomorrow. Until then, have a wonderful night. See you back here tomorrow.
Well, goodbye. And don't think it hasn't been a little slice of heaven, because it hasn't.
I'm Rod Eccles. This has been The Rod Eccles Show. I'm out.